Okay, so you always want to come early and stay late because I'm telling you, these podcasts are amazing. So, Tim, do you think that you know how to have a man-to-man conversation?
Sometimes
And what do you think a man-to-man conversation is?
direct and blunt communication, not necessarily angry or hysterical or anything like that, just direct.
Have you read the white paper on men who are wusses?
Nope.
Do you think you would read that white paper?
Probably not.
You know why?
Yes.
Uh, Luke and Kenny and Adam, you think you have the same? Like Tim thinks he knows why he wouldn't read that white paper. Do you think you guys have a different idea than Tim does as it relates to why he wouldn't read the white paper? I know you got to go, Tim. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Huge contribution to this podcast for young men. So, Voices of Integrity podcasts with young men, it's tough. It's a tough podcast. It's tough to listen. It's tough to participate. Um, do you find it to be tough, Luke?
Sometimes, yeah.
Kenny, do you?
Not so much.
And Adam, you?
Yeah, that is tough.
Why do you think it's tough, Adam, for you?
It is because it gives us, as a young man, many reality checks, like where we stand as a young man. And sometimes it is not bearable to hear the truth as a young man. Like what Tim did.
Right?
Yeah.
like when asked, you know, like you can feel the energy. Like, can you guys all feel the energy or not with Tim?
Little bit, but not as compared to you.
So Adam went ahead and said, yeah, it was tough. So he's kind of like, yeah, it's tough. Luke said, sometimes tough. And Kenny went ahead and said, yeah, not so tough. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
That
Because
is.
we don't match with each other.
Kenny, Luke?
Why do you think that is?
So
Maybe we are not at the same level of thinking.
right. And what is that level?
Maybe Kenny has surpassed the level of toughness, and we are still figuring it out.
And when it's interesting, because young men think toughness is in one thing, but it actually may be something totally different.
Yep, might be.
So Kenny met with a number of guys in their 80s in the Amish yesterday, very successful business guys. And Alvin Miller, he said that when he was 15, that it dawned on him he shouldn't be competing against his dad. And so you'll see, men compete. Younger men will compete against other younger men and compete against older men. They'll say things that they're hoping will engage somebody else in a mental or verbal battle, even though they're going to lose. They just will, because their brains have not been fine-tuned. They say they want more time. They say they want something, but they want it without doing the work and making the sacrifice. So level 1 want is I want it without doing any work or sacrifice or taking any risk. Level 2 is I want it, I'm willing to do a little bit of work. Now, they're drama kings and they think they're little work. They think they're working hard. And it's the cutest thing in the world. You kind of just go, huh, that's interesting. Like a lot of times, like they think they're busy, and it's like, how are you busy? Like you're not married, you don't have any children. Like, what do you do? Like, what do you do all day? And they won't track their day because they don't want to know the truth. They're enslaved, and they're enslaved. Like a lot of Christian men are like this. And so the Bible says that the truth will set you free. They don't want the truth because the truth will reveal who they really are. And so there's an interesting white paper, Men Are Wusses, and they focus on feelings. And then it leads them into being victims. And then it leads them into self-righteousness. And then it leads them into being entitled. And they're attention seekers. So it's like,
So what are these men enslaved to?
I think it's their own, it's idolatry, it's self-worship, it's like their ego. So you want it, not as a woman, you don't want these men in your life. Just telling you. Holy cow, are they a mess. As a man, you want them in your life just to, I don't know, as a challenge. Like, how is it that they can see themselves? Like it's weird because if they're Christians, then I'll speak for Christians because I was raised Christian parents, pastor, everything, and Baptist specifically. And it's like, and Men in the Mirror, a great book for young men, unbelievable book for young men. And it's like they talk about leaders, and so a great leader is when they see success, they're going to look out the window. What they mean is they're going to see how other people created the success. And when there's a problem, they're going to look in the mirror. And, as a 60-year-old guy, like I've noticed that, like I'm trying to come up with stories that will help young men, motivate young men, like to help them. You can be better. You were created to be better than you are. Like you have so much potential. You are absolutely magical. You're fearful and wonderfully made in the image of God. Like you are, it's crazy how amazing you are, but not the way you think you are. And so they won't listen to this. Young men, and so they won't study to be better. They won't put the time in. They won't put the work in. So level 2 is I want something and I'm willing to do a little work for it. Level 3 is I want something and I'm willing to do little work, a little sacrifice, and a little risk. Level 4 is I want something and I'm willing to work hard and maybe work some. So it's one of the three. And then level 5 is I want something and I'm willing to go give my life for it. This is one of the advantages of theoretically getting married. It's bigger, like you're willing to give your life for your wife. You're willing to potentially do a job that you don't like doing for decades to provide for your wife and your family. And you're not going to be a victim. You're not going to whine about it. My heart goes out to these men. Like I was talking to some boys, one of these men who are wusses. It's just I feel bad for the men. I feel bad for the wife and the kids, but the kids are like they've trained the children to like dad works hard and then he needs some relaxation time. Are you kidding? Like are you serious? Working hard is not working 8-hour days. Working hard is working 15-hour days. 6-7 days a week, because you need to do that to either put food on the table or you need to do that to achieve your life vision. You do what you need to do. I think a lot of young men aren't married. It's more and more. You look at them and you're like, but they don't want to work hard. They don't want to sacrifice. They don't want to take risk. So they won't. It's almost like they have this sixth sense. Don't listen to this podcast. Parents, if you have young men, especially if they're in their 20s and they're living at home. I don't know. Are we enabling them as parents?
You mean to be wusses
Right.
by letting them stay at home?
Right.
Hmm.
Like literally, if you look to nature, like when I can't find, and again, if you're Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever you are religion wise, I was raised a Christian, so I'm going to use Christian stories. Like, I'm not trying to proselytize here, because honestly, I'm like, these Christians, like, my gracious. But so the three sources that I go to find answers when I can't find answers and I'm seeking, you'd think if you're 60 years old, you'd have a lot of answers. I have more questions than I have answers. And it's like, so the three sources I go to find solutions is one is nature, two is the Bible, and three is young children, sometimes teenagers. So, so those are the three sources. So you go to nature, and what does a mama bird do to a baby bird? At some point, what does a mama bird do to a baby bird?
Kicks it out of the nest.
Pushes it out, pushes it. And if that one of two things is going to happen, that bird is going to fly or it's going to crash to the ground. I guess one of those two things at some point. So the baby birds, some of them, they don't fly. And so I think
How does mama bird know when to push out the baby bird?
I don't know. I'm not God. I mean, but maybe when, the baby bird's bigger than she is, but maybe the baby bird won't get pushed out beforehand. So it's like, in 18, 19, 20, it's like, hey, I don't know. It's just like, and they don't want these men who they won't men who are wusses. They don't want serious conversations. They avoid them like the plague. Like they won't read. You can just ask. What you can tell. Like how can you tell if a man who would you read this white paper? No. Why not? Because they're a wuss. They know at a subconscious level that they are, and they don't want to face it. But they probably won't say no. They'll probably give a lot of reasons, and these reasons, it's like, huh? And they're not going to be happy. They just won't. They will not be happy. They will be. They will grow up to be miserable. James McDonald said to his son, he said, "Son," and this is like a pastor of like 15,000, a church of 15,000 people, big church. Says from the pulpit to his son, he said, "Son, I think you have too high expectations for a woman. There's no woman out there that's going to meet your expectations. And if there ever was a woman like that, she wouldn't marry you because you're not that good." He says this in front of 15,000 people. Like, you're not that good, buddy. And then he says, and you better get married because every day that you're single, you're becoming more and more selfish and self-centered. So I can see that. I can see that. Like, I got married when I was 20. I was the second oldest of 6. Like, I go to these men's retreat and they talk about how selfish men are, like how they're selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed. I go home and I'm like, honey, be honest with me. Tell me the truth. Like tell me the truth. Like, and then I tell her what they say men are that come to these retreats. And I said, do you find that in me? I mean, I want to know. I really do. I really want to know. Is this true in me? She's like, no, it's not. It's not true. And I've thought about this. I'm 60 years old, going on within a few weeks. It's going to be our 40th anniversary. And it's like, I don't think I ever got a chance to be selfish. Not that, or my parents did such a great job, or maybe they built us where we could have lived on our own when we were 12. I mean, my parents taught us to go for without question. They taught us how to be independent. No question about that. My mom says maybe too much independence. So yeah, when you look at interpersonal relationships with siblings, I would not lift our family up and say, this is the model family. It's not. It's just, so it doesn't have to be on this topic. Luke, what would you like to accomplish in today's podcast?
I was thinking, how do you become a better thinker? Or
you get around people who are better thinkers, who will challenge your thought process, that your head will hurt. Literally your head will hurt being around these people, because your brain is like, there's so much quantity and there's so much quality of coming at you. You're like, I've never, like, it's crazy. They ask amazing questions. Like, and then you struggle with things. It's not this surface, superficial, temporal, like flippant. It's like they're going to challenge you. They might challenge you at every point. Like being,
no,
being Kenny's dad or mom, that helped them to be a better thinker, because he will challenge you. He will challenge you like nobody. So certain kids, like, I don't know if I was a challenging kid. I wish my parents were alive. Could say, was Mark a challenging child? And I think they would say, laugh and say, no. Like Kenny and I were part of a group yesterday, and they were talking about Amish and Roomspringer. And one gentleman, he wasn't saying it's a good thing. He wasn't saying it's all good, but he wasn't saying it's all bad. And I understood his perspective. I'm like, okay, you know, sow your seeds, wild seeds when you're young. Now, I didn't feel comfortable asking him, what about the scars? I mean, I did bring up some people don't make it out of the car. Literally. Like the three Amish that went ahead and were partying, got drunk, and then fell asleep in the car, and carbon monoxide went ahead and, like, what were they thinking? They weren't thinking. They weren't anticipating. They weren't saying this is dangerous. And just drinking is just stupid. It's just stupid. Well, get it out. Well, I've never had a taste of alcohol in my life. Now I might become an alcoholic. I might. I mean, there's days where I do wonder, like I, but I don't. So do you have to go ahead and do those things? Or is there a way around them? So, Kenny, your question.
Not sure that I have one.
So Kenny's question is, like, if you have a woman in your life and she tells you not to tell somebody, but then she goes to that somebody and asks them, does she really want you to tell the person even though she told you not to? So how do you become a better thinker? Get married, like have kids. It's like you're forced into it, but you're not. If you're a man with you're like, if you're a man who is a wuss, I guess you just let your wife do all of the thinking. Like, it'd be interesting. It would be interesting if you went ahead and gave this podcast to, like, you can name it whatever you want to name it. Men who are amazing men. Maybe an amazing man. Maybe a wuss would listen to it then. Well, that's tricking. It's just like there always is an excuse. There's always a reason. Like the 9 Ds for, it's like they don't have time. The reason somebody doesn't have time is not just because, I mean, you don't want time. Why? Because you don't want to reflect on, I don't know, how pathetic you are. I don't know. So the reason you don't have time because you're not a good steward of time. Reason you don't have time, money, is because you're not a good steward of money. Time, talents, treasure, trust, truth, temple, and thought. I mean, if you're not good stewards, you don't have it. If you don't have money, it's because you probably don't know how to work or you don't know how to save. One or the other. Probably. You don't know how to work, you don't know how to save. The reason you don't have time is because you don't know how to steward time. Simple, but it's not. It's simple to understand the concept. Taking personal ownership, like we all have 1,440 minutes in a day, 10,080 minutes in a week. Like if you say, I can't do something because I don't have the time, well, then track all your, 10,080 minutes. But men who are wusses won't, because they love being victims. They love being victims. They're self-righteous and they're entitled. And it's like a pandemic. I was talking to a mom, and she has a heart for her 3 sons. And it's just like, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Like, it seems like it's spreading. It's like with young men, it's like a virus. It's like it's spreading. It's like they're being feminized, and they're they come up with excuses and reasons and talk about their feelings. I didn't even know my feelings were important until I was 59 years old. 59 years, and I didn't realize my feelings were important. And when I realized my feelings were important, the people who said my feelings were important, they didn't act like my feelings were important at all. And then as I got into more of my feelings, they became addictive. It's like you can be addictive to your feelings are important. Like my feelings are important. And then, Mark, are you saying that people weaponize their feelings to get what they want and to manipulate, leverage other people? What do you think? Adam, what would you like to accomplish?
Maybe it relates to the previous one, but don't think so. Cloning yourself is a vast topic, and my question is, how can a young how can young men be able to apply it, or is it easier for young men if we compare it to men, uh, if we clone ourselves? And what are the pros and cons for cloning yourself being a young man?
Yeah. So cloning ourselves, it's reproducing ourselves. It's being able to, it's being able to, I think it's cloning success. It's like genetic engineering of corn. It's like cloning ourselves. And so that would be a great topic for the next podcast for sure. And I think,
Okay.
like, I remember as a young boy, I was probably 12 years old, and there was this, I think it was a single mom. Her husband never came to church, and she had a boy who was 5 or 6, and he was, before ADD, ADHD was diagnosed, he was ADD, ADHD, and he was so crazy and out of control and everything in church, and that made her so she can listen. So I don't know, as a 12-year-old boy, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have a son someday. Like it'd be good to go ahead and help her, give me some practice. Maybe I've said, would you like me to help your son in church behave? And she's like, sure, that'd be great. She's like, oh, I'm so thankful. Thank you. You're such a nice boy. Really not. I'm thinking about the future. 12 years old. I'm thinking, I'm going to have a son. I want to go ahead. Why don't I try it out on him? I wasn't really being a nice boy. I mean, and so
Were
it's just
you
interesting. So learning how as a young man, like your assignment for next week, that'd be great. Your assignment for next week is WIFM. What's in it for me? The concept of selfishness, being selfish in a selfless way or being selfless in a selfish way. And we can go into that and have that conversation. If you have any questions, make sure you pass this podcast along to others. Young men are hungry for the truth. I really think they are. So pass this along to other young men, older men, women, moms. Like moms are like, how do I raise a highly productive son? If you have any questions, connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300 outside the US 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.